I never thought anything strange could come from this day. On a rather sunny day, I filled up the trash bin next to my street with the garbage that had been filling my home. I knew that the dumpster truck would come around soon to empty it. It had always been every day, seeing as I had nothing else to do for the morning. I decided it would be the proper time to go for a quick 5-minute jog to the next block downtown. In fact, the temperature was a perfect spot so that I never really got too hot until the end of my jog. As I was walking back to my home as a part of the cool down, I was shocked at what I found. The trash in my bin had not been picked up, but rather strewn all around the bin. The barks of root beer cans were littered around the bin in a circle along with various other bits and debris. The black trash bag that I had placed the unwanted material into appeared to be empty completely. I was just baffled. I was just laid on top of the bin, wondering what could have even happened. I began to clean up the unexpected mess. However, as I was about to place one of bar cans back into the bag, it seemed as if there was a sack wasn't completely empty. I curiously peered into to find an old SNES cartridge. I didn't remember throwing out something like that recently. In fact, every SNES game that I had ever bought before is still sitting in my basement. I figured maybe whoever littered my trash everywhere did this, so I took the game out and examined it. What was on it surprised me. I know there are a lot of stories about games that have a label torn off or just suspiciously looking cartridge to begin with, but however, this label actually seemed professional in its making. The only thing off about it is the premise of the game. The label was titled, the game was simply My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Similar to how it is titled, just by the show's name on the iOS game, the Generation 4 character models were even present on the cartridge, as well as Twilight Sparkle, Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy, and the other main characters were present. This is especially odd because this version of the show came out in 2010, which was way after the time of anyone making an SNES game for a profit. And then I thought back to a particular game known as Battle Kid for the SNES. Someone had actually programmed that for an old system long after it was abandoned by most developers. In fact, the guy was even selling a physical copy of it to people for a small profit. After hearing this, I figured maybe it was some fan developer that wanted to share his or her creation with someone else. I was rather curious as why he didn't just done this in such a messy manner. Why couldn't he just left it on my front doorstep, and I would have gladly sat down and played it. As I was beginning to walk back into the home, I noticed that there was a back of the cartridge didn't feel as smooth as it should have had. My fingers had slid across the rough patch somewhere. I flipped over the supposed game over, and as I noticed one of the piece of tape on the back in black marker and almost seeming as if it was in Times New Roman font, it read, "I'm sharing the magic. T.S. T.S.? Those are the same initials as Tara Strong, the voice actor who plays Twilight Sparkle within the game that this is based on. I thought it was cool that whoever made this had also gotten approval of the awesome voice actor, as well as I remembered seeing a saying somewhere once before that described whatever Tara Strong touches turns to gold. Seeing as I had yet to see anything terribly bad come out of this, whether or not she's a part of it, I thought that whoever maybe made this game was determined how good this game really was. I think I've rambled on enough about how I managed to come across this game. I think it's time to describe what came from playing it. When I first booted it up, I was surprised to see that the 16-bit sprites within the game actually closely resembled what the 6 main ponies in the show looked like. They were sitting in front of what is Fluttershy's home in the show. They seemed to be relaxing with a nice little picnic. Twilight was reading another book as usual. Fluttershy was, resting along with her pet bunny Angel. Rainbow Dash could be seen lying down on her back, some sunglasses on. Pinkie Pie seemed to be focused on waiting for something to come out of underneath the picnic rack? I don't know, she's very hard to figure out in the show. Rarity and Applejack just had their backs against the tree. All this was covered with its classic logo, which read, My Little Pony. The most impressive yet was the audio. It was a classic of Pinkie Pie's Smile song in the show, which was one of my favorite episodes of all time. And it always seemed to cheer me up in the worst days. Hearing it through the SNES sound chip was just beautiful. I knew that this game had some effort put into it. After I was getting over the beauty of the Smile track, I pressed start to the game. The first few screens explained the basic controls that I would have to get used to to pass certain objects. If anything, the gameplay was similar to what the Thrine had to offer, in which you would have to use all of your characters to get past certain objects. For example, Rainbow Dash would move necessarily to remove thunderclouds and fly over things, while Fluttershy could be used to tame and walk past large living creatures that would happen to run past. Of course, for the imminent objects, along with several other threats, Twilight was therefore to work her magic. Pinkie Pie was able to launch a party cannon attack with somehow. It would turn the enemies and projectiles into some sort of cake batter. Applejack's main purpose was bucking all the apples out of the tree for more food in the event that your party's health got too low. However, apple trees were very rare in the game. They'll only provide maximum of 3 apples when bucked. Rarity was simply used for a majority of stealthy portions in a game, which you would have to get past a guard or avoiding being detected, as you had one of several of her outfits to blend in with your surroundings. Now I've got the lengthy description of the way the game played out of it. It's time to describe what's truly frightening about this experience. After playing through the majority of levels for about an hour, I came across a level simply titled Stage 16, Stop. I thought that was odd, and the way Stop was written was also unnerving, as it seemed small drips of blood were dripping from each of the red letters. As the level faded into the view, I was horrified for what I saw. Dead, lifeless trees that seemed more like Nintendo 64 graphics were appearing on the screen. The sky was also blackened with a slight hint of red. The ground I had been walking on was gray instead of lively colors I'd been seeing before. The character who was on screen was Fluttershy, who would seem more worried than usual. The freakiest part of all was the song. It was playing the Smile song in reverse. This version wasn't even a 16-bit version from the title screen. It sounded like an actual instrumental of the song just played in reverse. I was beyond words at this point. Whoever made this game was a sick and twisted individual. Confused why there was a sudden change of atmosphere, I decided to move forward, only to see a giant, bony black hand come out of the ground and grab Fluttershy. She was crushed within that same instant, blood running out of every direction. The game had never been this graphic with a character death before. In fact, there was never any blood in the event of a character had temporarily fainted. Deciding to try a different approach to overcoming this obstacle of hand, I thought I could use Rainbow Dash to fly over it. However, to my horror, the hand reached up all the way about the blackened sky, and it still crushed poor Dash within that insane grip that had gotten the best of me before. I thought maybe Pinkie Pie would help me accomplish something with the insane stroke of luck. No, she was crushed with the same giant pool of blood as well. I tried switching to Twilight to see if I could use her magic to get across or something, but the game was bugged. It would not let me. When I clicked on her screen, nothing would happen. I thought maybe I could use Rarity to get across with the camouflage, a disguise of some sort. No such luck. The camouflage was soon bloodstained. I tried switching to Twilight again, but the game was still unselectable. Applejack was my last hope. Of course, she was crushed as easily as someone would bite into a single apple. I'd given up all hope of beating this game when the game suddenly put into Twilight into control. In fact, I was no longer pressing any buttons. Twilight was just casually strolling past the spot where the other 5 members of the party were brutally crushed as if they were toothpicks. After she reached the edge of the screen, a dialogue box appeared.
Princess Celestia was right. Friends really do come in handy when you need them.
After I pressed A to remove the dialogue box, the reverse smile song stopped. It was dead silent for about 10 more seconds. And then another dialogue box appeared.
Their potential was exceedingly great. It even felt so good to possess it for myself. I feel like if I can accomplish anything now.
What the fuck? What kind of sick madness was this? This was not the Twilight I knew from the show. She would never harm her friends just for her own personal gain. Would she? And then Twilight turned directly towards me. I could see a red pixelated glow as she started to stare at me tensely.
I'm only merely doing what you've been doing this whole entire time. I'm using my friends as a means to escape my current life. You've grown bored of your own life. In the same way I have mine. It's time to move on.
Using them? How is anything she's done remotely comparable to my feelings? Almost as if the response to my question, she answered,
Your own life was empty, as was mine. You turned elsewhere to keep yourself entertained. You needed a purpose. I found mine, but it still seems as if you need to find yours.
At this point, a very disturbing image of Twilight with an unsettling smile like the one I saw in the episode My Little Pony, titled Lesson Zero. That smile sent shivers down my spine when I saw it in the show, but this far tops what detailed everything about this. Seemed as if it was a real-life photograph that had been snapped with a high-quality camera. Her eyes were completely missing. Beyond each of the sockets was just black void. The mouth was also toothless. There was no tongue or any features within it. It was just a black void, as if the eyes were... At this point, a text splattered across the screen, almost if it was letter stroke with carved with a bloody knife, and the text read,
I'm sharing the magic.
At this point, a loud, ear-piercing scream suddenly came across the speakers. I covered my ears to a faint attempt to block out the sound, but it was still coming through. I fumbled with a power button on the SNES for a few seconds, and the sound finally stopped. As the game was shut off, I ejected the game cartridge and left it sitting on my kitchen table. I knew I had shared this experience with everyone or someone. I needed all of this proof I could get to the show everything. My case was real. However, I felt really tired, and despite the time only being about 1 in the afternoon, so I figured I would have a quick nap. It wouldn't hurt me much. However, during the quick nap, I happened to have a strange dream. I felt like I was walking down a street in my original hometown of Boulevard. As I was just casually walking down the street when I stopped in front of something. It was someone's trash bin. I had madly ravaged through the person's trash respectably. For whatever strange reason, littering all kinds of trashes here and there. I also happened to take something out of the bag that I had somehow been carrying. That something was the cursed cartridge that I had managed to come across earlier. So far, the front label looked normal, but then it mutated into the shape of the frightening image from Twilight that I described earlier. Scared to even look at it for more than a few seconds, I dropped the cartridge and ran away from it. I dropped the cartridge and ran away from the residence as fast as I could. When I woke up from the dream, I was relieved that I was still in my home. However, the oddest part is, when looking at my kitchen table and noticing that the game was missing, I could have sworn I put the game on the table. As I madly searching around my home for the game, I got frustrated and I knew that it was futile to try searching for a game when I was getting more and more stressed out with every minute, so I decided to take a quick break and check my email. My mother had sent me an email detailing a strange incident that happened to her home that morning. Someone had gone and messed with her trash just like what happened to mine earlier. She made no mention of the game, however, I knew she probably thought that the game was just more garbage, as she wasn't very interested in gaming to begin with. I didn't bother asking her about it. It just that it seemed a weird question coming straight out of the left field at the time. Plus, there was the slight fact that what I had dreamed was actually what I had done. I don't know where the game is right now. Maybe it finally got hauled off to the dump where it belongs. Maybe my mother got a crazy idea to play it, and now she had the same the same trauma and suffer the same torment that I had to do individually. Passing it on to someone else, wherever it is, be careful. Be careful when you're playing it. If that Twilight has enough power to control people's actions in the real world, who knows what she'll be capable of doing next.
I was